And with that, we bring in Matt Schlapp, longtime Trump confidant, longtime political operative, member of the Bush administration, and Virginia resident and voter who joins us. Matt, when we're gonna look back on this race, the inflection point would have been the debate where Terry McAuliffe said, AG, parents don't have a role in their kids' education, shouldn't have a role in their kids' education. Was there a point before that where the groundwork was set for Youngkin to make education an issue?
No, I don't think so. I think this was one of these spontaneous moments. Yes, Terry McAuliffe bungled these questions, but remember, he got the questions because of all of this stuff that parents found out about while they were listening into their kids taking Zoom calls instead of going to school. And they saw this stuff that was their kids were being taught to hate their race, to hate their country, all the CRT, all the gender stuff. And then you had this terrible scandal, really a tragic scandal, where the father of a young girl discovered that his daughter was raped, and the school board told him he wasn't allowed to talk about it, and they covered up. And boy, that just, when you start telling parents they don't have the right to know what's going on in these schools, and at the same time the school boards are covering up this type of corruption, it was just a spontaneous grassroots issue that came out of nowhere. And good for Glenn Youngkin. He didn't avoid it. He embraced it. And it played into these cultural questions that have played on in our country ever since last summer with the violence of Black Lives Matter and these protests. And look, I think even in a blue state of Virginia, enough is enough. This woke, crazy stuff has just offended too many people. You can't call everyone a racist, and you can't tell parents they're bad, and you can't keep running down America and win elections.
It's fascinating. You've been involved in politics for a lot longer than I have, but I've never known a statewide race where education... We just go by hair color around here, Matt. But there's not been a statewide race, okay, where education was the #1 issue that I remember. The closest you might have come is 2000 in George W. Bush. But you put up this poll in terms of, this was right before the election, but I've never seen something broken down like this. People with kids, so parents were breaking for Youngkin by double digits, almost 20 points. Have you ever seen anything like that? And then second question, is that something that can be replicated by Republicans around the country for 2022?
Yeah, so let's look at this. So late breakers tend to go to the challenger, and nobody was more of a challenger than Glenn Youngkin, with Joe Biden as president and Terry McAuliffe doing this thing that we don't do in Virginia. He was running basically for a second term. We're a one-term state. So, you know, Terry McAuliffe was definitely the incumbent. He lost all the late breakers. But education is what the pollsters give people to choose. Yes, it's education, but different from the education strength of 2000 in the George W. Bush campaign. This education was different. It's about whether or not our education system is corrupt. It needs to be changed. We got to get the teachers' unions out. This idea that they close schools for 18 months, that my young kids still wear masks to school. I mean, these are very controversial things, even in a blue state.
Right. You're completely right. Education was being education is a proxy for these other social issues. It just sort of fell into that because it involved kids, and parents, as you rightly point out, care so much about their kids. The flip side of Youngkin's victory, at least for Republicans, is that if he wins, I should say, the flip side of his potential victory is keeping Donald Trump at arm's length throughout this whole thing. He's almost like viewed him as the crazy uncle and said, don't come, don't rally for me, I don't want anything to do with you. In fact, Glenn Youngkin would not say Donald Trump's name. And if that allowed a number of counties that Trump got creamed in to come back, and either Youngkin flipped or certainly made up a lot of ground. So does this now say that Republicans in blue states and purple states can win without endorsing Donald Trump? What does that mean for Donald Trump?
Well, I remember when I worked for President Bush, this is not an uncommon thing. When you're in a purple or blue state, a state that's the opposite of your president, they often don't want to nationalize the race. They want to run on the issues that are important to a state. And what I saw in Virginia was somewhat different. Virginia is unique because it's the home of the swamp, and nobody is a bigger enemy of the swamp than Donald Trump. So you have a lot of Republicans who are my friends, quite frankly, or my neighbors at least. I don't think they call me a friend anymore, who didn't like Donald Trump, even though they were Republicans, because he was so abusive to the system. But if you look at the issues that Glenn Youngkin ended up winning on, you have to admit, Leland, these are the issues Donald Trump has been talking about. He first brought up CRT in the military.
You make a great point, and we talked about this. It's how does Glenn Youngkin win embracing MAGA principles, just not embracing the MAGA personality? Excellent point, Matt. As always, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We continue to watch Virginia. What does it mean for the midterms for 2022? Also, what does it mean for President Biden's domestic agenda in his political capital? We pick that up